Hi everyone, today I'm sharing how to sew this beautiful tiered maxi skirt perfect for summer. It's made from muslin fabric which gives it a lovely drape and a breathable feel. The skirt features 3 gathered tiers, side pockets, very important, and a non-bulky waistband with a zipper closure so it's comfortable and flattering. If you prefer a stretchy waistband, I also have a separate tutorial on my channel for adding elastic. While an elasticated waistband is definitely easier to sew, and I have a few tutorials on my channel showing how to do that, it can feel a bit bulky, especially with so much fabric gathered around the elastic. So for this skirt I added an invisible zipper to keep the waist smooth and flattering. If you prefer elastic, feel free to combine this tutorial with the waistband method from one of my other videos, so feel free to customize it and combine tutorials. For this project you'll need about 2.5 meters of muslin fabric. You may use less depending on your size. I'll show you exactly what measurements you'll need to take, and that determines the amount of fabric that you'll need. You'll also need an invisible zipper. Mine was 30 centimeter. I think it was a bit too long. You can definitely use one that is 20, maybe 25 centimeters long. You'll also need some matching thread, sewing machine, pins or clips, scissors or a rotary cutter, some measuring tape, an iron, and your pocket pattern, which is available for free on my blog. Make sure you check the description down below to get the link. So here's the plan. Start by deciding how long you want your skirt to be. I'm 162 centimeters tall and I went for a total skirt length of around 100 centimeters. The skirt is made up of 4 main parts: the waistband, tier 1, tier 2 and tier 3. As you can see in the diagram, each tier is a little wider than the one above it, which gives the skirt a beautiful flow and volume. I wanted my finished waistband to be 4 centimeters wide, so I doubled that to 8 centimeters and added seam allowance to that width. The length of my waistband is my waist circumference plus 2 centimeters for seam allowance. The width of my first tier will be 30 centimeters, that's including seam allowance, and its length is my waist circumference times 1.5. Because we're adding side pockets, we need side seams, so divide this panel into front and back. And the back is also made out of 2 panels, since we need to add the zipper at the back of the skirt. It might sound complicated, but it really isn't. The width of the second tier is 33 centimeters, that's including seam allowance, and the length is the length of tier 1 times 1.5. Again, split this into front and back panels since we want to keep that side seam all the way down on the skirt. And the last tier has the width of 37 centimeters and the length is the length of tier 2 times 1.5, also divided into front and back pieces. Now that you have your measurements figured out, the next step is to cut all your pieces just like in the diagram. This includes the waistband, all 3 tiers, and the pocket pieces if you're adding them. Make sure to label or organize your front, back and side sections, especially since tier 1 will be split into front, back and 2 back pieces. Take your time here to keep everything accurate and everything organized. This will make sewing much easier later on. So these are my final fabric pieces. This is my waistband, the front panel for my first tier and the 2 back panels, my second tier made out of 2 parts, and my third tier made out of 2 panels as well. For the pockets I used a vintage sewing pattern as inspiration and adjusted it to fit the skirt design. You can download the pocket pattern for free from my blog. I leave the link in the description below. It's a printable file so you can easily print it at home and cut it out. Using the pattern, cut out 4 pocket pieces, 2 for each side. Make sure that each pair mirrors each other so they'll match up correctly when sewing into the side seams. You can either use your main fabric or some lining fabric. Take your tier 1 front panel and measure 8 centimeters down from the top edge on each side seam. This is where the top of your pocket should start. Then pin your pocket pieces right sides together with the skirt fabric so that the curved side of the pocket is facing inwards towards the center of the panel. Repeat this on both sides of the front panel. Now do the exact same thing with the 2 back pieces. Measure 8 centimeters down from the top edge. Pin the remaining 2 pocket pieces in place, again making sure the right sides are facing and that the pocket placement matches the front panel exactly. This ensures your pockets will line up properly when you sew the side seams. Now sew each pocket piece to the skirt panel using a straight stitch. Once the pockets are attached, press the seam open and press the pockets out away from the skirt. This is optional, but if you'd like your pockets to stay neatly in that direction, you can top stitch along the seam using a straight stitch. Now place the front and back panels right sides together, making sure the pocket pieces and side edges are properly aligned. Sew down the entire side seam in one go, starting at the top, around the outer curve of the pocket and down to the bottom. When you reach the corner where the pocket meets the side seam, lift your presser foot with the needle down to pivot cleanly around the curve. Once your side seams and pockets are sewn, take a moment to press everything well, especially around the pocket openings and side seams. Then it's time to gather the top edge of tier 1 so it fits nicely into the waistband. Set your sewing machine to the longest stitch length available, mine is 5, and sew a straight line along the top raw edge of tier 1, about half a centimeter, 1 centimeter from the edge. So leave long thread tails at both ends so you can gently pull on one thread to gather the fabric. Work the gathers evenly across the front and the back panels until the length of tier 1 matches the length of your waistband. Now take your waistband piece and start by pressing the long edges inwards by 1 centimeter on both sides. This will hide the raw edges inside once the waistband is folded. Then fold the waistband in half lengthwise, wrong sides together, and press again. You should now have a neat clean strip that's 4 centimeters wide with no raw edges showing. Now it's time to connect tier 1 to the waistband. I sandwiched tier 1 between the two folded sides of the waistband, so I placed the gathered edge of tier 1 inside the waistband, making sure it sat snugly between the two folded edges. Then I pinned everything in place and top stitch along the bottom edge of the waistband to secure it all together in one go. And now that I'm looking at it, I know there is an easier alternative method. First, unfold the waistband and sew the right sides of the waistband to the right side of tier 1 using your seam allowance. Then fold the waistband back into place, enclosing the seam and top stitch to finish. This step-by-step approach gives you more control, especially if you're newer at sewing. Before attaching the zipper, it's important to finish the raw edges to prevent fraying. Zigzag stitch or serge along both raw edges of the back opening. Once the edges are finished, open up your invisible zipper completely, then flip it right side down. Line this side of the zipper with the teeth facing away from the opening, from the seam opening, to the left side, like I did here. So when you're done sewing and flip the seam allowance to the inside of the skirt, the zipper teeth should sit perfectly along the center of the seam opening. Pin it in place and sew it down using an invisible zipper foot, stitching as close as you can to the zipper teeth. Then repeat the same process to the other side of the zipper. You might need to zip it up a couple of centimeters to make it easier to sew the second side in place. When you're done sewing and flip the seam allowance to the inside of the skirt, the zipper teeth should sit neatly right at the center of the seam opening, hidden between the layers of fabric. In my case, the zipper was exactly the same length as the first tier, so I didn't need to sew any additional seam below it. If your zipper is shorter, you can just sew the remaining back seam from the bottom of the zipper down, then press everything flat for a neat result. Now it's time to attach the second and the third tier. For each panel, sew a long straight stitch using the longest stitch length available on your machine across the top edge of each tier. Gently pull the threads to gather the fabric until it matches the width of the tier above. Sew the front and the back pieces together. Then align the side seams of each tier, front and back, and pin the gathered edges to the bottom of the previous tier. Then sew the gathered edge to the bottom of the previous tier, and of course repeat for the third tier. Now onto the hem and the finishing touches. Fold the bottom of tier 3 up by 1 cm. Then press the entire skirt, focusing on the waistband and hem for a neat finish. But I recommend you try the skirt on and then see how much you need to shorten it. Then fold again by 1 cm and press. Sew the hem in place, and that's it. You've created a beautiful tiered maxi skirt, perfect for summer days. Don't forget to tag me on Instagram at Olipop if you make this skirt. I'd love to see your creations, and let me know if you're also a fan of hidden pockets. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!